This is the very first podcast with Andrew and Greg here, and I guess it was just, what is today? Today's the 22nd for me. It's about 9:16 p.m.
It's 23rd for me at 12:46.
There you go.
So lunchtime.
There you go. So I'm here in the States, in Texas, and Andrew's over in. Are you in Adelaide right now?
Yeah, in Adelaide.
Yeah, Australia. If you couldn't tell from his weird accent. So we, I guess, just had the European moment. Was that last week? Or was that the beginning of this week?
Yes. No, it was the 19th.
There you go.
19th.
So just a few days ago. So I haven't really heard a lot out of them. The only thing I heard out of there was the simple setup thing. That was kind of a big part of the MUM, apparently. And then the CCR router. Those are kind of the only two things I really heard about.
What was the simple setup?
Simple setup, it's like it's, I'm trying to think of a better way to describe it than like the Ubiquiti interface. It's just a really scaled down single interface that's, these are all your configuration options all on one page. It's kind of the basic, this is all you need for a router. So it's...
So your end user, your mum and dad user buying a MikroTik device or being given one can just go click, 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 and set up.
Or
don't have to worry about the complex
Or I guess
stuff.
it's probably really good for like installers, you know, guys that climb towers, you know, stuff like that, or guys that just go and pop units out on houses, you know, stuff like that. Just really quick configuration, or people maybe that just want to do a quick point-to-point, something like that. I assume that's what they're shooting it for. So that, and then the CCR, which is the cloud core router.
Cloud core.
I'm so sick of the word cloud.
Name.
I'm so tired of it.
Yeah.
Somebody was telling me how they had a customer. I think it was Mike Hammond said that he had a customer call him and said that they wanted to buy the cloud. Like, how much for the cloud? Just send me a quote. What do you got? So yeah, it's such an abused word, but it is what it is. So the cloud is a new word. Have you heard anything about price? Like even what it's remotely supposed to be like?
Nothing yet. I had a bit of a guess based on pricing of current units and things like that. I don't think they're going to go like ridiculously high compared to existing units. So I'd say my current guess is kind of about $2,000 tops. I honestly don't think they'd be trying to push a device much higher than that at this point in time. Although I wouldn't mind seeing something that goes above and beyond this in the future as well. So we'll just see how it goes, I guess, which is probably what they're doing too. Yeah.
So the cloud core, as I'm sure a lot of you guys know already, and I'll probably try and see if I can figure out how to pull up a little bit of graphic in this video. I don't think it'll be too hard. It's a multi-core processor made by, I think, Tylera is what people are still theorizing. I don't know that anybody's really said one way or the other. But
yeah, I haven't heard anything specifically from MikroTik, but it's definitely, well, it definitely matches up with the specs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So 36 core, each core at 1.2 gigahertz, which that just sounds so weird. It sounds so hard to imagine that. I don't know. So it's got what does this thing have? It's like 12 gig ports and then 4 SFP ports, I believe. Yeah.
Correct, and a little micro USB port over to the left there.
Okay. Oh, okay. So if you're looking at it that way, you've got 16 ports, and each port is supposedly mapped to its own CPU. 16 is 32, so I don't know, maybe they're mapping the input and the output.
Maybe they're mapping in and out.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. In gets one core,
in
out
and
gets
would
one
make
core.
sense to me, plus plus some additional for management and things
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
what I was thinking. Why would you have double the number of cores you actually needed? Which is interesting. So input or output on every individual interface is going to have 1.2 gigahertz to play with. I guess that means moving away from switching ASICs.
Both directions.
Yeah, exactly. Moving away from switching which is not a big deal. So any of your switching is going to have to move to bridging. The only problem with that is bridging traditionally just goes through the CPU.
Through a single CPU.
Exactly. So how's that going to work?
So it's interesting because over the last couple of versions, we've gone from having like support for multi-core. Well, back in version 3, I think it was, they introduced proper multi-core support, but still you couldn't see what was being processed over what CPU. And now we've got the profiler tool, which actually shows us what's being put over what CPU, and we also have the ability to define for specific interfaces, so Intel gigabit NICs and things like that, what core handles the RX and TX chains. So, but there still doesn't seem to have been all that much work put into actually making the router functions itself work over multiple cores. You still see for example, if you fire up a B test on a router, you still see it'll max out one core.
Yeah, one single core.
Can't go any further than that.
Or your firewall rules, your different chains, stuff like that. That's all just consuming one processor. So it makes me wonder: are you going to be able to map those specific functions to one, or are they just going to add like multi-threaded support where it can, whatever the CPUs that are left, it can just span across all of them evenly? Which, man, I think that would be probably the best option. That way it can scale to any number of cores in the future.
I mean, it seems to be like maybe you've got stuff coming in through the firewall. How does it know which CPU to send that off to in this sense? Like, if the process is all done in the one place, that's still going to be a bottleneck for you.
Yeah, and I've gotten support calls and emails from different people saying, I've got this quad core CPU right now, and I'm only at 25% utilization, but my router is starting to drop packets like crazy. I can't figure out what's going on. I'm like, well, most likely that 25% is your firewall chain. You have 27 layer 7 inspection rules in there, and you're maxing out a single CPU.
Yep.
So you got to get in there and look at it. And so if they could just have that natively span across multiple, I mean, it would never be a problem again. You wouldn't have to think about it, which would be nice for me, because the less I think, the better off I am, for sure.
The more automated it is by default, the less setup you have to go through. I mean, if you're constantly having to go back and forth and change what CPU these interfaces are running over and what CPU this firewall is running over, sure, you're probably earning your money in running back to it every now and again, but really you want something that's just set and forget.
Yeah, and hopefully right out of the box, the way this thing's going to be configured is it'll properly, I'm sure it will, it'll properly scale, interface 1 to these exact CPUs, interface 2 with these next ones, and chop everything up. So for me, the default config, I immediately take it and remove it, no matter what the device is, no matter how large or small it is. I just can't stand it. I'm a purist, I guess. I don't know. I know a lot of people that
start from
that build off of it, but I don't like to do that. And so I hate the idea that if I erase the default config, I have to go and remap all that stuff. That would be a nightmare. I don't want to do that. But also, it gives me hope for, if I want to run it in VMware and give it 8 cores, that it'll go ahead and span, all the process across those. That'd be nice.
Yep. And I've done a bit of work testing it out in, just testing new versions of RouterOS out in ESX, because we run a number of machines with ESX and RouterOS sitting on top of it, just as a security layer as such. So if something goes wrong, we can always roll back, or we can take full backups of the machine, full snapshot, sorry. But yeah, you see, if you put it to one core and let ESX take control, you can easily get, I think I've done up to, 12 gigabits a second or something on some of my tests.
That's nice.
But once again, yeah, you run into limitations because B-test can't run any faster. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I think it was at the last U.S. MUM in Vegas. They said that they were completely rewriting B-test, and I think they gave a few details. I don't remember exactly what they said, but from what I remember, it was some pretty good optimizations that I guess have been needed for a while. So,
yep,
looking forward to that.
Yeah, I do definitely notice. Like, I'm actually logged into one of our routers at the moment that does on average 100 megabits of traffic, and you can see here that management CPU utilization is spanning across multiple cores, Ethernet and firewall spanning across multiple cores. So it looks like there's more and more work going on there, moving stuff around. Still the occasional unclassified that pops up, so something they haven't completed yet. But no, it's good hope for the future.
Oh, for sure. So since we're talking about the CCR, where do you see this positioned best? I mean, who do you think is going to buy this right off the bat?
I don't. Given the low power usage, I can see that it would be useful at the ground level of towers and things like that. If you've got a tower with a number of N links coming off it nowadays, there's no reason that something like this wouldn't be able to go in there. And just looking at the specs again of these processors, the 1.2 gigahertz sits at 25 watts. So
yeah.
add to that whatever the rest of the hardware uses, and you're still very, very low power consumption. It's something that you could power off solar easily. I do also see that it could quite easily be put in a core. Say you've got 2 or 3 upstreams, anyone running under a gig to their upstreams, and another connection to an IX, so an internet exchange somewhere. You've got easily 2-3 gigs worth of throughput, then pushing that back out to your clients or your towers, whatever you're doing there. And I guess the addition of SFP just means it's a lot more flexible in that you don't have to have a switch or something converting your gig Ethernet to fiber.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was talking to somebody. They were kind of back and forthing with me about the usefulness of it with the 12 coppers and the 4 SFPs. They wanted to see much the opposite, and they've I think Microtech said that they're just going to be an option of this that's going to be mostly SFPs, right? And then I think they actually said some SFP pluses in there, which are going to be the 10 gig interfaces.
SFP pluses would be very interesting.
Yeah, it would be. Because as far as I know, I haven't really seen Microtech come out and support any one manufacturer of a 10 gig option. You know, even for like their x86 stuff, say, hey, if you're doing 10 gig, use this right here. So them kind of standardizing on this, I think, helps. That's gonna. Well, honestly, it's their only kind of official movement into the 10 gig market anyway. But from me, I come from kind of the colo side. So one of the first things I think about is like a data center facility, and most data centers aggregate, multiple upstream providers. You're going to be multi-home. That way, your addressing has redundancy. You've got multiple links coming in. Generally, I see gig links coming in. That's pretty much the default handoff nowadays. So you're getting a gig copper link from somebody. So I see this positioned really well for the colo provider. So you have 2 of these routers. You want dual cores. You've got 2 providers coming into each one. These guys supposedly can handle 16 gigabits of throughput. I don't know what that's based on, if that's based just purely on the chipset itself, or have they actually done some testing with this?
They've actually done testing.
Yeah, so if they've actually done testing, usually the highest number is going to be bridged with no firewall rules. So I'd like to see what does it look like when it's actually routing. It's doing at least a modicum of firewall.
Routing, doing some firewalling.
Exactly, just to protect
chucking some layer 7.
I don't know anybody who runs a Microtech that doesn't have firewall just to protect the box itself. Just to protect me as well. So once you do that, you're going to be doing a little bit of routing anyway. So
we've got a couple of devices that are similar to that actually have the firewalling turned off, but they run as VPLS endpoints. So the customer never sees those devices. VLANs pass to them, VLANs pass across them.
Gotcha.
And purely for performance purposes, there's no connection tracking as such. So makes it gives us an extra, I think, 50, 100 megabits throughput. So
nice. That's
on some of the new AHX2s.
Yeah. I've configured a couple of those now for a couple of ISPs. They seem to be doing really, really well on the BGP front performing. So a couple of these CCRs for any carrier, aggregating several gigabits of throughput would be great, man. even terminating customer connections on there. Because I know MikroTik's really low on RAM requirements. I'm assuming in this product probably they're starting to, I would assume, beef up the amount of RAM that the system can support. With V6 starting to get a lot more prevalent, you need a little bit more overhead, especially if you're, say, you're BGP pairing with a lot of customers, not just your upstream providers.
It's interesting though, because the current limitation of 3.6 gig or whatever it is also due to the fact that they're running what is still a 32-bit system. So there might be some changes there in the future to 64-bit to have to support that.
Because these Tyleras, I want to say that most of the documentation I read on was talking about how they're 64-bit cores. So it sounds like they might be making a jump here pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just reading here, same thing, 64-bit architecture. So that'd be a big bonus as well, because everything is currently limited by RAM. And I remember back when we were looking at using Zen and then KVM to run a couple of virtual machines on top of the router, you'd run into a limitation because there's only so much RAM you can use regardless of what CPU you have available. So that'll put these in a position to be used as a hypervisor again.
Yeah. So I think a lot of this is going to come down to price. I just really... It's hard to judge anything until price. There's MSRP and then there's street price, and really, I guess you can't really say where people are going to position it until you see how much it costs. Because I know like the AHX2s would probably every customer I've ever worked for, the AHX2 would be overkill for a tower router. So this, I'm sure, would just be insane for it. Yep. Unless the price is right.
Primarily. Well, the other thing you have to consider is, based on price, do any of these people use fiber links in there at the moment? Is it worthwhile getting rid of switches or media converters or things like that to put in a couple of SFPs?
Gotcha. And that...
I can think of a couple of places that we have that, once again, you'll have two MikroTiks there with switches in front of them and then radios and things like that. And a lot of the radios we're using now, because they do more than 100 meg, the power's up the top on next to the radio, and there's a fiber module coming down. So there's no reason you couldn't connect directly.
The SFP is actually a good transition into another product, the RB 2011, which was announced like at the US Moms, and they've said that and to me a MikroTik product isn't real until it hits routerboard.com, because usually when it hits there, that means it's pretty close to hitting the street. And so the RB2011L-IN has actually been announced, and I was talking to a distributor last week here in the States, and they were saying that they were expecting them to arrive the end of this week or the end of next week. I'm not sure. And so I'm supposed to get an early one. Now these guys, there are only 5 copper gig ports and 5 copper fasties, but I remember at the MUM they were announcing SFP versions of this. So talking about aggregating SFPs, this would be a great little box, and I think, do they have the MSRP listed on these things? I'm not sure where they're supposed to even come in.
The price I have currently is about $120, which is, for what they are, is ridiculously low as far as I'm concerned. And my local distributor has them listed coming in around 30th of March. They were supposed to be here about a week ago, but apparently there was another 2-week delay or something. So I've got one of those on order as well coming in.
Huzzah. So these guys, because I would assume that the SFP version is going to be relatively close. It seems like they're powered about where the 750G used to be. It looks like it's 600 megahertz processor, whereas the Gs were 680. So it's relatively close in power, which, I mean, if you're aggregating just some tower equipment with some SFPs, anything like that, especially once they go SFP, I can see using these as...
Makes a nice little NTU.
Oh, yeah, like customer premise equipment, something to put out like in an apartment complex. Anything you're going to just terminate dark fiber on, man, it'd be a great little remote box for that. Maybe like a VPLS endpoint, anything really, honestly anything. It'll be a great site router. So I'm looking forward to these.
It's like the upgrade after the RB450G came out. Everyone was like, well, we can put MPLS on this and run it as an endpoint. Well, now they've got a version coming out with fiber, so you really should only need to have one device on your customer site. It would be the only other thing I'd like to see on them, and I think they've listed this for the fiber version is an internal power supply rather than one of the little 12 volt jobs.
The Walrus, yeah.
Yeah. Just because those things fall over all the time, or people just use cheap ones and they break. And you want something that's decent, or that you can connect to an IEC and connect up to UPS power rails, etc.
Yeah, yeah. And I was troubleshooting with a guy a while back. He thought he had a dead unit, and in his massive cables, the giant brick he had plugged in the wall had just fallen out. That was the end problem there. So actually having a standard power cord that just plugs in sometimes nice as well.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to those because they discontinued the 750G, and now the 750GL is a 400 megahertz processor. So it's taken a little bit of a hit power-wise. So I'm glad to see they're kind of stepping it back up with something else. The port density is nice, having 10 ports. Can always use a few extras. So I think I'll start probably using these in my towers.
Yeah, once the SFP one comes out, I'll grab one of those as well, or see if I can trade back my my non-SFP version with someone.
Yeah, and it's got that little the little mount kit, which is actually really cute. Kind of snaps on the bottom. The cables feed in.
Stops anyone. Well, same issue you've mentioned. It stops people from accidentally jiggling things or unplugging things.
Yeah.
I guess it would provide a bit of protection for the fiber as well.
Yes, those are pretty cool. Let's see, what else have they announced recently? The SXT G5H. So what is that? That's the SXT gigabit version, right?
Yep, and there was a Groove. I think it was the 751. 751 in a 5 gig version. Just the little Soho router.
Right. Yeah, and they
had a 2.4, and now they've got a 5.8 version.
And they've got the 751G, the 2 gigahertz version, which apparently is already selling in Europe. There's from what I understand, I was reading from one of the distributors. There's a holdup, I think, with the FCC or something like that here in the States.
Yeah.
So it's delayed.
I believe we've got them in stock here. So
yeah, you would.
I think we beat you.
Yeah, I would already have one if it wasn't the case. That's unfortunate. I hate that stuff getting hung up like that.
Obviously, our kangaroos that deliver the mail every morning hop a little bit faster than your guys.
They're really big pouches. That's what it is.
That's exactly what we use them for.
That and fighting. Just got a box with them. So I think
that's we don't talk about it.
That's like the first rule of Kangaroo Fight Club. So as far as like hardware announcements go, I guess that was about it. I don't know what I expected, but the CCR was pretty cool. Did you hear pretty much anything else out of the MUM? I haven't.
Most of the information we've got so far has been just people who were there and talking to them, posted on the forums. The fellow that writes some blog posts with me, Andrew Thrift, who's a New Zealand-based consultant, has actually done some research himself, and his speculation was that they're using some new software in there as well, specifically because of the mentions of fast path and slow path and fast path packet processing. So I'll include a link to the 6Wind page, but if you go on either Greg or I's blog, you should be able to see a link to it there as well.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting networking stack. They'll basically will replace the Linux one if that's what they are using.
Yeah. Yeah. And so FastPath, I haven't heard them talk about it. So did they say that it was actual software implementation?
They MikroTik haven't talked about it directly themselves, but they mention they mention in the discussion about it and things they've said so far, the terms fast path and slow path packet processing have been mentioned. So you see in the specs here, 15 million packets per second on fast path, 8 million packets per second on standard path.
Yeah.
Now, something else that this six win gate software allows is that you can assign packet processing to certain CPUs, and in this case, it works with the tile processor in that you specify one CPU for control and the next 4 or 5 for packet processing. So that would make sense. That's one of the ways that they can actually do that processing and utilize all those cores without having to rewrite some of their existing networking stuff.
Okay, because I was doing just a little bit of research on kind of the fast path thing, and some of what I found was talking about hardware implementations of fast path being the packet comes in to a single interface and exits that single interface, and they were calling that technology fast path as well. But if it's a software implementation, that does sound interesting.
It's something. Well, fastpath is something that Cisco and other hardware-based routers came out with years ago.
Oh, ages ago.
But obviously, yeah, implementing the same sort of thing in software, it's a bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, it was. So Cisco came up with it. I don't know the specific date. I think it was in the late 90s, but they called it NetFlow. And some people also referred to it as route once, switch many. So when it would go through the processor, it would figure out the route path. It would take that route path and it would create what they call the flow. So everything else that came along in that same flow wouldn't actually have to hit the processor. It would just go right through.
Yeah.
And then eventually.
And likewise, this is a software version.
Right.
So
right.
Doing the same thing without needing your FGPAs.
Mm-hmm. And so Cisco, not too long after that, came up with Ceph, where they actually unloaded all of that processing in MITRE tables, and so it's all in hardware now. And then kind of MPLS sort of streamlines that process as well a little bit, just turning it into kind of a quick packet lookup, which streamlines it a bit.
It's another software version of the same thing.
Yeah. So because I remember seeing the performance boosts with MPLS on the MikroTiks, and I think it was solely for that reason because you didn't have to do as much of a lookup, and now they're picking it up and boosting it even again using this fast path software.
Yep.
And so it doesn't seem like the fast path is specifically tied to these cores, does it?
From the information that I've looked at here, the way it goes through the same thing. The first pass packets are inspected. They pass via the slow path, and then it marks the flow, so it knows to continue to pass it without having to go to the CPU. That's part of what these what are they? The Tiela or Tile GX8036 processor is made for. So rather than having to pass that stuff back to the core, the hardware allows it to be marked properly, and these two would tie together.
That's interesting.
So once again, I mean, a lot of this is speculation based on the terms they've used, given there's not that much information out there yet, but it all seems to match up so far.
I wonder how that works with like your Mango rules or say layer 7s, because layer 7 looks at the first few packets. Although I mean that shouldn't. I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking more if it was like kind of a hardware implementation, it would hit the software and then just route, because I mean all of the Mango rules and everything, it has to be CPU based. It has to actually pass through the routing engine. Yep. I'm guessing it would all still work with it, because it's based on. I mean it's made for Linux, so they're not going to just toss everything else out the door. I guess all that stuff would still work together.
Yeah, I'd say to me it seems to be a combination of the two. Like the obviously you still have all your Mango, your IP layer 7 stuff passing through, but once something's been determined there and you've got a set path for it, pass it back to hardware and still monitoring what's coming through, but not having to process it in the same way. So it should be yeah, interesting to see what the how they actually use it in the end. Because this, given the fact that they do have so many CPU tiles, as these guys refer to them, there should be a number of ways they could actually then implement that in the software. Whether you even running multiple versions of RouterOS is something a couple of people have suggested. You've got 36 1.2 gigahertz RouterOS versions that could be running and processing traffic coming in specific ports. So
that would be interesting.
I'm not recommending anyone do that. That would be a terrible thing to deal with.
Well, I mean, in theory, it could be kind of interesting. Like, what is it? Like Cisco in their ASAs, they have the ability to do multiple contexts, is what they call them. So you can run virtual firewalls on a single piece of hardware. You know, if you could have, I don't know, maybe 20 MikroTik instances running off of one box and just have, you know, the internet connection flow in, and then each customer can actually have almost their own physical firewall, I guess. That'd be kind of interesting.
The other one, I guess, where it comes in handy is quite often it becomes very complex to do rate limiting and handle QoS on the same box.
It does.
Especially when you're marking things coming in and out.
It does.
So a couple of times I've done things where you end up having two RouterOS devices, one in front of the other, just handling each their own function. That way it's easy for anyone to log in and say, well, this one's doing all the speed limiting, this one's handling the QoS on top of that.
Oh,
so
I'm 100% with you, because I use a lot of connection marking, you know?
Yep.
And those two don't seem to kind of jive together. You know, the rules kind of interfere with each other. And I like to be able to just... Because I've got my quality of service to where I can basically just take it and paste it and not have to change anything other than the values, you know, like how much each queue gets. And if I can then take...
Same.
You know, just being able to break that out would be so nice.
It takes anyone else coming in there to have a look and see what's going on. They go, well, I need to move this rule, but you've got to change 4 different things to actually allow you to reprocess these packets here in the QoS after they've already been rate limited over here, and it gets a bit confusing.
Yeah, and it also helps break things out. So if something's getting squirrely in one place, and you don't, you know, I mean, you can see that it's not arriving at the next router or vice versa. I mean, usually you can help kind of debug those things a little bit better.
You can see where it's passing, yeah.
Exactly. Because, I mean, nobody's operating system's perfect. Everybody's going to have oddities, you know, and things get a little hairy in there, especially when you just have a lot of stuff going on.
Look, I think one of the best things that MikroTik have ever done is having an updated version of that packet flow diagram, so you can actually follow through when you're building your firewall rules and say, okay, it passes to this chain and this chain, and
I know it's pretty much the MikroTik Bible, start to finish. That right there. Especially anytime I'm doing any quality of service work, I always have to refer to it, because I mean, that's what it's there for. So you don't have to memorize it. It's an invaluable tool, and I'm sure Giannis is going to be sit back twiddling his invisible mustache while we talk about his packet flow diagram. But it is, to me, it's probably the single most useful thing on the wiki, is that packet flow diagram.
The other thing is, when you're doing consulting for people and they're going, what's pre-routing? When does output come in? And you're going, well, to point them straight to that. Here you go. Have a read of this. And let your brain knot up for half an hour, and when you finish, come back and we'll go over it again.
Yeah. So. I've gotten to where I have to make visual diagrams for pretty much everything. So if somebody asks me a question, instead of answering the question, I'll just make a picture and send it to them. It's so much easier that way. I've amassed a large inventory, and I usually put something kind of trolly in there too, so it's not like I can necessarily use it with other people because they won't get the joke, but it's good times.
Like in pretty much every MikroTik presentation you've done.
All 2 of them. Yeah.
For those of you who missed it, check out Greg's presentation at the Las Vegas Mum. So it's a good one there for how to detect if someone's got a rogue access point or something connected to your network.
I think the only people that endured that were the handful of people that fell asleep in the audience and happened to stay through the whole thing. I don't know. I was going for something that was different and possibly illegal, so that's what I went for.
Well, it's not something that's easy to do with any combination of hardware available. So I think using, what was it, Auto IT and Router OS together was what ended up doing it.
And that's just because I'm too lazy to do it with something like PHP. Do it the right way, I should say. I'm too lazy. This is a proof of concept. That's what I like to say. It's a proof of concept. It doesn't have to be perfect. It works, so that's all that matters.
So, what else are you looking forward to in the next 6 to 12 months that MikroTik are bringing out? I'm going to say I'm still holding out for an updated version of the Dude.
Yeah,
I don't know if anyone other than myself uses it, but
I know almost everybody I know uses the Dude, and some people don't keep documentation anymore. They just keep the Dude, and
then they don't back it up.
Or they don't realize that when the portion of the network that contains the Dude goes offline, it's not really useful anymore. At that point, you've got. But it's no substitute for a network diagram that actually has the device IP address going to this device IP address. But it's a really great tool.
Well, that said, there's a function in it. There's heaps of functions that most people don't know about or don't use. One of them being the fact that you can actually have the maps exported to a PNG file. So if you've got the Dude running on, say, a Windows server like we do, and backing it up daily, you can actually have those images exported elsewhere. So make them available on a separate website that you can actually go in and say, well, if the Dude's down, here's all our details of what connects where and the networks they connect to. The only things you really don't pass then is the username and password or any comments you've put on the device.
Yeah, I actually in our Houston data center we use the Dude as the monitoring tool for all of our availability there, as well as kind of a backup to our Bryan data center. And then the Bryan data center's got a proprietary. Well, I mean, it's got What's Up Gold, and then it's just doing ICMP monitoring of stuff. So it's, they both watch each other, but a lot of people don't realize that the Dude actually has a web interface too. And so for our screens up there, our projection screens, we just have the Noctex log into the web page, and it shows all the devices, virtually all of the same functionality you have in the standard Dude. It just doesn't look quite as pretty. That's the only thing, but to me, nothing I make looks pretty, so it doesn't really matter to me.
I've done the same.
Yeah, so
sort it by
great.
devices down.
Yeah, and the Dude moves beyond just ICMP. Like, you can have it check a web page. It keeps track of our DNS servers, make sure they're still functioning. So it's a lot of functionality for something
queries.
Free.
Yep.
It's really cool for that.
That's good.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say the other thing I was actually working on the other day was SNMP monitoring of devices. Quite often it's handy, rather than having to log into a switch and go, well, what MAC address is this port on, is going back to it and having the switch SNMP monitored, and just jump in, double click on the device, head to the SNMP tab, and you've got your bridge forwarding database there with interfaces listed. So
it's nice.
That's something else they're quite good for. Yeah, saves logging into a bunch of switches, or alternatively, I think there's a couple of paid solutions out there that work based on interfaces. So you're looking at like $200 a year or something for 100 interfaces to monitor, which really racks up when you're providing to like we do, say 1,000 students in a site. You end up having 1,200 interfaces for each site. So,
yeah.
It's not really worth keeping a database of that.
I can imagine. Yeah. So, what am I looking forward? Honestly, what I'm looking forward to the next year is going to the next MUM. That's what I'm looking forward to. Well, I want to see some of the announced hardware hit the market. I definitely want to see that, but just to be able to actually go and interact. This Vegas one was probably my most interactive MUM that I've been to, where actually talking in front of people always stresses me out. I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't stress them out. So kind of the build up to that weirds me out a little bit, but the mum is kind of one of the only places that I feel like a normal person, because I'm not just some weirdo. Well, I mean, I am, but I'm among other weirdos, so I blend into the crowd. So
in a good way.
Yeah, for sure. But and there's always so many people to talk to, and I don't get a chance to talk to hardly anybody. A couple of people have hit me up just recently saying, "Yeah, I saw you, but you seem so busy, I didn't want to bother you." And that I just wish I had more time to actually interact with people, just in general.
Yep.
These things. So that's why I'm really looking forward to the mum.
Oh, good. I'm hoping, from what I've heard, there's going to be another Australian mum in 2013. The original word was that it was going to be end of 2012, but so hopefully that all goes ahead. I guess the only other major thing I'm still holding out for is someone that writes a ridiculous amount of little MikroTik scripts. Is the Lua, or LUA, addition to scripting. They actually brought it in at the beginning of version 4, in the beta releases of version 4, basically replacing the current limitation of only being able to store 4,096 characters in a variable, to being able to write to files directly. So you'd be able to have a script essentially create a database or something for you of the users that were connected to the router or the traffic that's passing through it.
Was that the feature that they brought in, and then it only lasted like one beta revision or two beta revisions and then dropped out? Yeah. Yep. Because I found that when I was researching the last mum presentation I did to do the write to file, because if I could have had the write to file ability, I could have done everything inside the MikroTik itself for the rogue access point mitigation, yep. But that functionality was stripped out. So are you saying they're talking about bringing it back, or you just want it back?
I would like it back. I mean, I for probably a year before that, I was asking if there was any way around or any way to write to files, and I mean, there's even ways currently that you can export. You can export configuration to file, or you can do a print command and have it export to file as well. But there's no way to easily read, or there's no way to read a file over a certain size at this point in time. So even if you want to put your variables all in a file, or read an IP address list or something like that, you're restricted to 4,096 characters. So,
yeah, that would be nice. Oh, the dream.
It'd open up a lot more possibilities for scripting. So I'd do some crazy stuff with that.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think that's about all for me.
Cool, man. Yeah, I think I'm about spent. It's 10 o'clock here, so it's getting close to bedtime. Which is code for I'm going to sit on the couch and watch TV with my wife for a while. Yeah.
And fall asleep on the couch.
It happens. It happens.
Oh, good.
All right. Well, guys, I guess if you have any questions, be sure to email Andrew, because I'll promptly ignore you. But you should be able to contact both of us equally.
He's a bit like
that. Andrew's my secretary. Let's see. So, what's today? It's the 22nd. That's right. And this was our first podcast, so we'll just see if we can't make this kind of a regular thing. I don't know how we're going to come up with material. I mean, we can just talk, but I'm pretty sure people aren't going to be terribly interested in the things we have to say, because it gets a little weird.
If there's anything people are interested in, please let us know.
For sure.
Even down to specific projects and things you're working on that perhaps you're trying to figure out a new feature that's been released, or you're trying to understand an existing one. Let us know, and we'll see if we can help you out there. Yeah, what
would be cool is if we did this regularly and it got enough support that we could actually convince the MikroTik guys to jump on and be able to ask them questions.
That would be cool.
That would be. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't happen, but it would be interesting.
They might sit here, watch it, and laugh for a bit. So
I have no doubt. All right. So, any people out there, especially on the topics we talked about, if you have any additional information, especially on that CCR guide, because neither I nor Andrew were at the moment. So, if you've got any extra information, be sure to post it up on either of our blogs. And I guess thanks, guys. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Everyone have a good night or day wherever you are.
For sure.
Okay.
Bye.
See ya.